My dad chose my stepsister's housewarming over walking me down the aisle, then my grandfather exposed 20 years of his betrayal. I, 28 female, got married last week, but what should have been the happiest day of my life became a painful reminder of my dad's consistent pattern of choosing my stepsister over me. My dad Johnny, 54 male, decided not to walk me down the aisle because he chose to attend my stepsister Greta's, 32 female, housewarming party instead. The worst part? I found out about his decision just 2 days before my wedding. I need to provide some background here. My parents divorced when I was 6. Mom caught dad cheating with Sarah, 49 female, who later became my stepmom. Dad married Sarah when I was 8, and she already had a daughter, Greta, from her previous marriage. Initially, I tried to be understanding. Dad explained that Greta's biological father had abandoned them, and he wanted to make sure she felt loved and accepted in our new family. The early years were awkward but manageable. I spent alternate weekends at Dad and Sarah's house. Greta was nice enough, though she was 4 years older and we never really connected. Dad went overboard trying to make Greta feel included, which I understood at first. But as years passed, it became increasingly clear that he wasn't just including her, he was prioritizing her over me. It started with small things. If both Greta and I had activities on the same weekend, Dad would always go to hers. He said it was because she needed more support since she was dealing with abandonment issues. When I was 12, he missed my first solo in the school choir because Greta had a volleyball game. At 14, he skipped my science fair, where I won first place, because Greta needed help picking out a prom dress. Despite all this, I still wanted Dad to be part of my special moments. When I met Mark, 30 male, 3 years ago, I made sure to introduce him to Dad right away. Dad seemed to approve, though he spent most of that dinner talking about how Greta had just been promoted at her job. When Mark proposed last year, Dad was genuinely happy for us. He even teared up when I specifically asked him to walk me down the aisle. We set the wedding date 8 months ago. I checked with everyone's schedules, sent out save the dates, and made sure Dad and Sarah confirmed they could attend. Dad kept talking about how proud he was going to be walking me down the aisle. He even came with me to look at venues and suggested songs for our father-daughter dance. Everything seemed perfect until 2 days before the wedding. I was at my final dress fitting when Dad called. His voice was hesitant as he told me he had a situation. Greta had planned her housewarming party for the same day as my wedding. She had just bought her first house, and apparently, this was the only day that worked for her schedule. Dad said he had promised to help her set up and be there for the party. I was speechless. When I finally found my voice, I reminded him that the wedding date had been set for months. He sighed and said he knew, but Greta was really excited about her new house and wanted the whole family there. He actually suggested I could ask my uncle or grandfather to walk me down the aisle instead, as if this was a completely reasonable solution. My fiancé Mark was furious when I told him. He immediately called Dad, telling him how disappointed he was and how this decision would affect our relationship going forward. Dad's response? Weddings happen all the time, but this is Greta's first house. She would be devastated if I missed her party. My grandfather Robert, 78M, my mom's dad, stepped in when he heard what happened. He's always been there for me, attending every event Dad missed over the years. Without hesitation, he offered to walk me down the aisle. I accepted because what choice did I have? It was too late to change anything else. The wedding itself was beautiful, but Dad's absence was felt by everyone. My cousins Kim, 26F, and Lisa, 24F, were actually invited to both events and chose to come to my wedding. They later told me that Greta's party was just a regular housewarming, some snacks, drinks, and house tours. Nothing that couldn't have been done on any other day. Throughout the day, Sarah kept texting me, saying I was being unfair by making Dad choose. According to her, Greta was his daughter too, and he was just trying to keep everyone happy. She even had the nerve to say I was being selfish by not understanding that Greta needed Dad's support during her big moment. My maternal aunts were livid. During the reception, they shared more stories I hadn't even known about. Like how Dad had left my high school graduation party early because Greta called saying she was having car trouble. Or how he missed my college acceptance celebration because Greta needed help moving some furniture. Every story revealed a pattern I had tried so hard to ignore. The ceremony was beautiful despite everything. Grandfather looked so proud walking me down the aisle, his head held high. Mark's family stepped up amazingly. His sister Emma, 26F, spent the morning with me, keeping my spirits up and helping me get ready. His mom Linda, 55F, treated me like her own daughter, making sure I felt loved and supported. After the ceremony, Dad sent me a long text. He said he was sorry and would make it up to me somehow. He talked about how he never meant to hurt me and how he just wanted both his daughters to be happy. I blocked his number without responding. Mark's mom told me I did the right thing by not letting Dad's behavior overshadow our special day. The next morning, as Mark and I left for our honeymoon, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to deal with any more drama or excuses. Mark has been my rock through all of this. He says we should focus on our new life together and not let toxic family relationships poison our happiness. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Dad. This wasn't just about missing the wedding. It was about years of always choosing Greta over me, of making me feel like I was second best in his life. I'm tired of being the understanding one, of making excuses for him, of pretending it doesn't hurt when he consistently prioritizes his stepdaughter over his biological child. Some relatives say I should try to understand Dad's position, that he was just trying to be a good father to both his daughters. But walking your daughter down the aisle is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. He chose to miss it for a housewarming party that could have been held any other day. I think that says everything about where I stand in his list of priorities. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the wedding. After returning from our honeymoon, my grandfather Robert invited us for what he called an important family dinner. He said he had some things to share about Dad's behavior over the years that we needed to hear. When Mark and I arrived at grandfather's house, several family members were already there. My mom's sisters Maria, 51F, and Beth, 49F, my cousins Amy, 25F, and James, 27M, and even Dad's sister Jane, 52F. The atmosphere was tense, and I could tell something big was coming. After dinner, grandfather went to his study and came back with a worn leather notebook. He explained that he had been keeping track of every significant time Dad chose Greta over me since I was young. At first, I thought he was exaggerating, but then he opened the notebook and started reading. The list was devastating. Over the past 20 years, Dad had missed 27 major events in my life because of Greta's activities. Some I remembered clearly, others I had apparently blocked out. Grandfather had documented everything with dates, occasions, and Dad's excuses. When I was 10, Dad missed my first piano recital because Greta needed help with a school project. I remembered crying backstage when every other kid's parents were there taking pictures, but my dad's seat was empty. At 13, I broke my arm during a soccer game. Dad was supposed to be there, but Greta had a dance competition. Mom had to leave work early to take me to the hospital. The list went on. My sweet 16 party, Dad left early because Greta called saying she was stranded at a friend's house. My high school graduation, he showed up an hour late because Greta's car broke down. My college acceptance celebration, missed entirely because Greta needed help moving to her dorm. Even my college graduation, he left right after the ceremony because Greta had a job interview the next day in another city and wanted him to drive her. But what really shook everyone was when my Aunt Maria shared something none of us knew. She had proof that Sarah had been deliberately scheduling Greta's events to conflict with mine. Maria showed us old Facebook posts and family emails that revealed a pattern. Whenever I had a significant event coming up, Sarah would suddenly plan something important for Greta on the same day. The swimming competition incident when I was 16 was particularly telling. I had been training for months, and Dad promised to be there. The night before, Sarah announced that Greta needed to visit a college campus the next day, and only Dad could drive her. Maria had later discovered that the college wasn't even doing tours that day, it was a holiday. My cousin Amy then dropped another bombshell. She had attended Greta's housewarming party and learned that Greta had originally planned it for the weekend after my wedding. But Sarah convinced her to change the date, claiming more family members would be able to attend on a Saturday. Amy showed us text messages from Greta admitting this. Dad's sister Jane had her own stories to share. She had confronted Dad multiple times over the years about his unfair treatment. His responses were always the same, that Greta needed extra attention because of her abandonment issues, that he had to prove he loved her as much as me, that he was trying to make up for her biological father's absence. Jane revealed that Dad's behavior had caused rifts in his own family too. His parents, my grandparents Rose and Tom, had stopped inviting him to family gatherings because he would always leave early if Greta called. His brothers had given up trying to maintain a relationship with him because every plan would get cancelled if Greta needed something. The dinner ended with everyone agreeing that what we had witnessed wasn't just favoritism, it was systemic emotional neglect. My uncle suggested I send the list to Dad, to show him the pattern of his behavior. But I decided against it. After 20 years, I didn't want to give him another chance to make excuses. Mark held my hand throughout the entire conversation. When we got home, he said something that really hit home. Your dad wasn't just choosing Greta over you, he was choosing the image of being a savior to his stepdaughter over being a real father to his own child. I spent that night looking through old photos, seeing all these moments with new eyes. In almost every important photo from my childhood and teenage years, Dad was absent. But what struck me most were the photos where he was present, always checking his phone, always looking distracted, always ready to leave if Greta called. Some family members have suggested family therapy, but I'm not interested. This isn't something that can be fixed with a few counseling sessions. This is 20 years of conscious choices, of putting one child's every whim above another child's major life events. The wedding was just the final straw. I've decided to take some time away from all of it. Mark and I are focusing on setting up our new home and building our life together. I don't want to spend any more energy trying to understand why I was never enough for my father. Sometimes understanding doesn't bring peace, it just brings more pain. Update 2. 2 months after the wedding, our photographer finally delivered our wedding photos. Mark and I spent an evening going through them. The photos were beautiful but emotional to look at. Every shot of grandfather walking me down the aisle showed his pride and love. At 78, he stood straight and tall, beaming as he escorted me. There was one particular photo of him fixing my veil that made me cry. The tender care in his expression was everything I had always wanted from Dad. What happened next was completely unexpected. My cousin Kim posted some of our wedding photos on social media, specifically highlighting the father-daughter moments with grandfather. The photos went viral in our extended family circles, leading to an uncomfortable comparison between my wedding and Greta's party. Several guests who attended Greta's housewarming shared their photos too. The contrast was stark. Her party photos showed a half-empty house with barely 15 people attending. Dad appeared in a few shots, looking miserable and checking his phone constantly. Sarah kept trying to stage happy family photos with him and Greta, but his discomfort was obvious in every frame. Meanwhile, our wedding photos showed over 200 guests genuinely celebrating with us. The timing of these photos couldn't have been worse for Dad. He had been trying to justify his decision to various family members, claiming that both events were equally important and that he had to be there for Greta. But the photos told a different story. He had missed a major life event for what looked like a casual gathering that could have happened any other day. The photos sparked intense family discussions. Dad's siblings, who had mostly stayed quiet about his behavior over the years, finally spoke up. His brother Mike, 56M, commented on how empty and unnecessary Greta's party looked compared to my wedding. His sister Jane shared our wedding photos with their elderly parents, leading to more family drama. A week after the photos circulated, Greta shocked everyone by sending me a lengthy email. She admitted that she had known about my wedding date months in advance. Sarah had pressured her to schedule the housewarming on the same day, suggesting it would prove where Dad's loyalty really lay. Greta confessed she went along with it because she was tired of Sarah constantly painting me as the privileged biological child who didn't understand their struggles. This revelation caused serious problems between Dad and Sarah. According to Jane, they had a huge fight when Dad discovered Sarah's manipulation. Dad's family, who had maintained a polite distance until now, started openly criticizing his choices. His mother, my grandmother Rose, called him a spineless disappointment at a recent family gathering. The situation affected Greta's relationship with her mother too. After sending me the email, she moved her housewarming party photos to a private album and posted a public apology to me. Sarah responded by commenting that Greta was betraying family loyalty and siding with outsiders. This led to another round of family arguments. Dad tried to do damage control by sending an email to the entire family, attempting to explain his actions. He claimed he was trying to keep peace in both families and didn't realize how his choices had affected me. His sister Jane responded with a scathing reply, attaching photos of all the important events he had missed in my life, including school plays, graduations, and award ceremonies. The whole situation has created deep rifts in the family. Sarah has been calling various relatives, trying to defend her actions and paint herself as a concerned mother who just wanted her daughter to feel loved. But nobody's buying it anymore. The photos made it impossible to deny the reality of what happened. Mark's family has been incredibly supportive through all this. His mother Linda suggested we create our own wedding album focusing on the positive moments, the love between us, the support of real family, and the joy of starting our new life together. She said sometimes the best family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose. Update 3. Last week, Dad showed up at our new house unannounced. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, clutching an expensive-looking wrapped gift in an envelope. He started crying as soon as I opened the door, begging for forgiveness. He said seeing the wedding photos, especially the ones with grandfather, made him realize what he had thrown away. Mark wanted him to leave immediately, but I decided to hear him out. We sat in the living room while he tried to explain 20 years of choices. His explanation was pathetic. He said he had always felt guilty about cheating on my mom and divorcing her. Somehow, in his twisted logic, he thought overcompensating with Greta would make him a better person. He admitted that Sarah had manipulated many situations, but he had allowed it because he was afraid of losing his second family. While he was still talking, Sarah started calling him repeatedly. After the fifth call, he finally answered on speaker. She was yelling about him neglecting Greta again, saying he had promised to help her pick out new furniture that afternoon. The irony of the moment was painful. Even while trying to apologize for always choosing Greta, he was being pulled away for another of her emergencies. Dad looked utterly defeated as he realized the pattern he was stuck in. I stood up and returned his gift and letter unopened. I told him that he hadn't just missed my wedding, he had missed my entire life trying to prove something to his second wife and stepdaughter. His choices had consequences, and this was one of them. Before leaving, he mentioned that Sarah was threatening divorce because he had come to see me without telling her. He actually asked if I could tell the family to stop sharing the wedding photos because they were causing problems in his marriage. I simply told him that wasn't my problem anymore. He made his choices for 20 years, and now he had to live with them. Later that evening, Greta called. She wanted to meet and apologize in person, saying she never meant for things to get so out of hand. I declined. I told her that while I appreciated her coming clean about the housewarming party, I wasn't interested in building a relationship now. 20 years of competing for Dad's attention had left me emotionally exhausted. Mark and I have decided to move to another state for his new job opportunity. We haven't told Dad or his side of the family. Only grandfather knows, and he's helping us with the move. He said sometimes the best way to heal is to get a fresh start away from toxic relationships. Sarah has been telling family members that I'm being cruel to Dad, that I'm punishing him for trying to be a good father to both his daughters. But I'm done explaining myself. Dad chose his path repeatedly for 20 years. Now I'm choosing mine. The only good thing that came from all this is that I've realized what real fatherly love looks like. Grandfather stepped up not just for my wedding, but for my entire life. He was there for every milestone, every achievement, every disappointment. That's what a father should be. Sometimes closure isn't about forgiveness or understanding. Sometimes it's about accepting that some relationships can't be fixed and moving forward with the people who truly value you.